Hey guys, I want to firstly thank you for all the questions that you sent in. So I don't know if I'm going to do this in 1 or 2 parts. It depends how long I talk about stuff. But I got a lot of questions from you and I'm really excited to answer some of these. So let's go through some of them. What is a pet peeve of yours when it comes to directing? So I think the biggest pet peeve of mine when it comes to directing is people who are unprepared. I actually yelled at an actor one time on set. Not yelled, but was very stern with her because she came in and she didn't know her lines. I feel like as someone who has a theater degree and has performed all over the world in theater and big productions, you have to learn your lines. You have to show up. If you forget your lines when you're on stage, you will never forget them again because it is so embarrassing when you have 500 people out there and you forget what you're saying. It's actually professionalism. And that's why I actually prefer theatrical actors, is because they are used to doing the work. When people show up on sets and they have their little thing of sides, so on there's little lines, it's called sides, and usually when you're on a TV or film, it's a quarter sheet of paper and it's really minimized. And when you have actors who show up and they're still trying to memorize their lines on the day of shooting, that's completely unprofessional. And what kind of performance are you going to get out of them? Because they're thinking in their head about memorizing their lines and what their lines are rather than doing the lines well and the way they're presenting their lines. I also had a DP who didn't know all his shots when he showed up, and he kept on looking over the shot list. And I think that you need to prepare ahead of time so when you come on set, you don't slow other people down. So it's really about people who aren't doing their job. If you are a beginning filmmaker and you're starting out, you have to realize that you're going to work with a lot of incompetent people, and it's just the way it is. One thing that you can do to mitigate that for you, if you're actually trying to be a filmmaker, is look at the quality or the characteristics of that person. Look at how they do everything. And if that person's committed, hardworking, whatever, they probably will do a good job for you, or at least work really hard. Make sure when you're starting off that you really find people who are competent, or at least will work really hard for you. It will save you so much headache. This is Oscar Aviles. With being an adopted child, do you ever feel like you want to reconnect with your culture in any way? Yeah, that's a sort of a deep question. Growing up as a only Korean kid in my whole area, I was made fun of a lot and I was put down. It was a racial thing. It was difficult. I actually hated being Korean initially because it made me different. It made me something that people had made fun of. So I spent a lot of time actually hating my ethnicity, which is very sad to say. And then I've kind of grown more into it since I've come to LA. I had a friend, Roy, who now has passed away, actually wrote a TV treatment about some of our experiences. He actually brought me under his wing. He's like, hey, you're adopted, you don't know much about your culture. He got me into Korean dramas. He brought me Korean places. K-Town in Los Angeles, if you're not familiar, Koreatown is the biggest group of Koreans outside of Korea. So we'd go there, and he really reintroduced to me my culture in a very loving way. And you know, I owe a lot to him, and getting a little emotional because he's passed away now, but I really am proud of being a Korean now. K-pop, all the stuff we're doing in our industry, actually it's a source of pride for me at this point, but it didn't used to be. So it's a very good question, very complicated question, a very deep question. Thank you, Oscar. From Decide to Think, one question that I can think of is, I see you cover a lot of K-pop music videos, but beyond that, how much more are you thinking about growing the Korean language, culture, collaboration with the Koreans, blah, blah, blah. How much more are you going to do thinking about that? So, I think I mentioned before, I'm doing a lot of K-pop videos because of my TV pilots over at NBC right now, when I had to do a lot of research about K-pop, and then I got into it and I just really liked it. I actually went to the Korean Cultural Center in Los Angeles to try to learn Korean. They have a class there, it's pretty cheap, and you go once a week and you actually study it. I was dating a girl and we were both going, and then we broke up, and then I stopped going. But I actually do want to learn Korean a little bit more. This is a very embarrassing story, I went to this Korean church for a while with one of my mentors. He wanted me to go with him. It's all in Korean, I didn't understand a thing. And we used to sit at this, they had these Korean language classes after church I used to go. It was me and a bunch of 5-year-olds. Like, it was me sitting at this tiny table with a bunch of like first graders going through their workbooks. Wasn't embarrassed, it's fine. This is from Jazan Andis. What kind of music did I make as a solo artist? Are there any K-pop artists that remind me of me? No, there are no K-pop artists because I think their stuff is much better than mine was. Because their stuff is much more complicated. So when I was in conservatory, I had a teacher who taught jazz music. He was very into jazz. He did amazing jazz piano. I was never into jazz, and there's a reason I'm telling this story. I have a great appreciation for jazz, but jazz really just wasn't my personal thing. But what he used to tell me is that he never was into jazz, but then when he did jazz, because jazz is so complicated, it's so intricate, it's so technical, that listening or doing other music was boring to him. And it's true, jazz has a lot of extended chords, 13ths, ninth chords, tritone substitutions. If you're in music theory, you know what I'm talking about right now. And he uses, different modes, Mixolydian mode, sometimes Lydian mode. Once in a while he uses Dorian. I know in a lot of K-pop music they use a Phrygian where they drop the two. So what happens is that that having a palette for that kind of ruined all of the music for him. I feel like the same is true for K-pop now because they mix so many styles and it's so complicated and complex. I feel like it actually kind of ruins you for American music because American music seems so boring by comparison. So this is from Kman2324. It says, from the business side, do you think what Luna did with their 12 individual, this is interesting, with their 12 individual, do you think what Luna did with their 12 individual music videos and their 3 subunits having multiple music videos makes any sense financially? I know BlackBerry is a subsidiary of a group that's a huge arms dealer. So when you do any kind of business, you want to diversify your risk. That's why in the film industry you do something called doing a slate of movies. Nobody really wants to do one movie. You want to do 5 movies. A typical slate is 5. If it's less, you should say a slate of 3. If it's 3, a slate of 7. If it's 7, and the reason why is diversifying risk. Typically speaking, if you produce movies, in that 5 films, you expect 1 to be a runaway hit. You expect 2 to completely tank and just lose a ton of money on, and you expect 2 to break even. That 1 that's a runaway hit should pay for everything else and make you a profit. And so that's why you try to diversify your risk. With big companies like it's the Kwang Group, being arms dealers, I'm sure that they don't need money, but everyone likes money, especially if you make a lot and you want to keep on making more. So I think it's a way for them to diversify their risk. And what's really great about them is they can continually put money into stuff without having to worry about losing money. Let me give you an example. I had coffee with my buddy Chris over at Netflix last month before the quarantine. He's the head of the whole science fiction division at Netflix. I met him over at a coffee shop right next to the Netflix building in Hollywood, and we sat there for 2-3 hours just shooting the breeze. And I asked him, I was like, if you were to move to a different company other than Netflix, where would you go? He said, Amazon. And I was like, why? Because Amazon is diverse. They make all their money off selling products. And if they lose money on the entertainment stuff, it's not that big a deal. A company like Netflix is only entertainment. So if they lose money on entertainment, the world is falling down. The sky is falling. They can't invest a lot of extra stuff, or they don't want to invest stuff in things that aren't working. All that is to say, again, he was absolutely correct. A company like Amazon, even if you don't watch a lot of their shows, I feel like they're more awardee type shows. They can lose a ton of money. They don't really, not that they don't care, but they can afford to keep on putting money into shows that aren't making them money because they're making their money elsewhere. So if you're from a company that's not specifically entertainment like BlackBerry Creative, they just have unlimited resources, and it's very, very helpful because this way Luna can take a longer time to build themselves up, which is very helpful. Back in the old days, I heard stories of a friend of mine who was a big music producer told me, like, companies used to actually in music develop artists. So artists would start off and they weren't very good and they didn't have a following. An example is an old group called Aerosmith. I'm sure none of you guys have ever heard of them. But Aerosmith was a big band. They really were a huge band at their day. But when they started off, they weren't a big band. They were very, very small. And because companies used to develop artists. Even though the band didn't do well, they kept up with them and kept up with them and kept up with them. They developed them over time. Same is true for TV shows. Back in the day, there was a huge show called Cheers, which I'm sure none of you know. Way back in the day, it was an enormous hit for NBC, but it took 3 years for that show to really build a following, because back in the day, development executives would develop a show. It's called development. Nowadays, there is no development. Development what today means finding a project, and if it doesn't hit within the first few episodes, that project's shelved. You have to hit right away or you're gone. And that's the way all entertainment seems to be now. The advantage of something with Blockberry Creative is that they don't have to do that. They can take time to develop. So whether it's 12 individual videos or subunits, I don't think that that is, well, man, that's such a creative choice. I mean, it could have helped build up a following for them, but I can't guarantee you that that would have hit better than to have them all come out at once and then do their subunits and their individuals later. It's hard to say. That's a good question. But the fact that they're bankrolled by a company outside of their field is why they'll be successful, because they'll give them time to build up, which is, I think, what you found now. I don't know. K-Man, why don't you tell me what you think? It's a good question. This is from Ignorant Celibus. It says, please tell how and where did I study? I went to a school called Fredonia out in New York. It's a conservatory. The conservatory I went to was called Mason Hall. So it was a larger school, and then there was a conservatory within the school. How I studied is I actually started off in the music program, and then I branched out to the theater program, and I did both. It was called a musical theater major. It's a whole theater degree and an entire music degree and an entire dance concentration. So you do all the prereqs of a theater major, you have all the prereqs of a music major, and you have an entire dance concentration. So you're getting 2.5 degrees in 1 degree. It's grueling. It's a very unfriendly, cruel world. And what I mean by that is, if you get left in the dust, nobody cares. If you fall back and don't get cast anything, and no one cares. Your success is completely up to you and how hard you work. And at the end of every semester, you do something called juries. And what juries were, is you were in front of the entire department all by yourself, and you would perform all your stuff that you prepared for your juries all by yourself, and you'd get a grade. And if you didn't pass your juries, you'd be kicked out of the entire program. I think people have talked about every month in K-pop, they have to do something in front of everybody. And it's very similar in the conservatory program. It's like every semester you had to do your juries, and you could be on the chopping block and you would be gone. That's just passing your jury, saying that you had the skills to continue in the program. That's not counting being cast and stuff or, anything like that. I mean, it was very, very difficult. And in that sense, it really prepares you for the real world, because that's kind of what the real world is like. So yeah. Ocean, are your eyes blue? No, they're not. I got these sort of on a whim, ordered through your 1-800 contacts, and I just keep on ordering them. It's just easy just to keep on ordering them, but no, they're not. They're just brown. I usually wear glasses. So this is the way I look with my glasses on. Does it make me look smart? But the answer is no. No, they aren't. The next one is from Boo. It says, I demand your band music. I want to ask you. Okay, for one, it's a two-part question. I actually, when I recorded the Ask Me Anything video, the same day I recorded some talking about my band music, a video just about that. I will link in the music. Now, understand, it's pretty dated. It's like 8 years old, 8 to 10 years old, and so it's probably not that good, but you asked for it. I'm just telling you asked for it. Don't be mad that it's not that good. But yes, I'll link some of that for you. Do I hate myself for being adopted and I don't know my own birthday? These are deep questions. So, I don't hate myself for being adopted. I really believe that everything happens for a reason. And I was supposed to come here to the United States and have the parents I have. And look, I'm talking to you. If I had been in Korea not adopted, then this never would have occurred or never would have happened. So I don't hate that. Not knowing my own birthday or anything about myself, being a mystery child, that is weird. I'm not gonna lie. It's weird. I don't have any health history. When you go to the doctor and they're like, well, was your dad sick or did he have heart problems? And I don't know. And the whole idea of why I was abandoned to begin with, I don't know. You know, your mind can go all kinds of places. Maybe they don't want me, or maybe they loved me so much they couldn't keep me, or maybe they just didn't want. I mean, you can think both sides of the spectrum. Maybe it's because they loved me too much, or maybe they didn't love me at all. It's a lot of different questions. It definitely causes sort of some identity issues in you when you don't even know who you are or what your name is. It's kind of weird. This is from Coco. When did I first discover K-pop? You know, I discovered it a little while ago. Like, I realized it existed. I mean, I knew it existed, but I didn't really listen to any of it. And then I think it was with my friend Roy, as I started getting more into Korean things, I started paying more attention to things because they're Korean, because it's my background. But I haven't really get into it until recently, doing that K-pop pilot where I was doing my research. Because, I mean, I think you guys know, like, once you watch a little, it's like a giant hole. You get sucked into this vortex and you're like, wow, this is amazing. So I needed sort of the necessity for that entry point into it. Like, I don't know if I would have gone in on my own. It created a situation where I had to do that for me, to go and do my research, and it just sucked me in ever since. So kind of really heavily within this last year. Nathan Wears Pants says it would be neat to hear about what your band life was like. Yes, I have a video that's coming out. Holly Molly Tolly, you ask? If you used to be a musician and a film producer and an actor, have you thought about making longer videos of some songs? I would be interested in your opinion on the filming side, but also on the music side of the songs. Like, generally, I would love to see you breaking down songs in every aspect from of your knowledge, and teach us how to interpret stuff the way you do. That's a super good question. You know, once a music nerd, always a music nerd. Every time I hear stuff, you just... If anyone out there studies music, maybe you can chime in whether you think the same thing. Like, once you study music and you end up breaking down music so much, you can't help but naturally do it. When you hear stuff, it just happens naturally. A lot of my friends in conservatory said they couldn't enjoy music anymore because every time they heard it, they were just subconsciously analyzing it. I do that with movies now too. It's like subconsciously, every time I hear music in movies or anything, I subconsciously analyze it. I've tried to stay away from the deep musical analyzation so much, to focus more on the filmmaking things, because I think there's another channel that is so good with that, with the Eastman kids and React to the K. I think they're amazing, and so I don't think I could do better than they are doing, because they're currently in conservatory breaking stuff down. But I have thought about interjecting once in a while some musical things once in a while into it. It's a very, very, very good question, and I might, because of you, Holly Molly Tolly. So this is Nuki Pizza, and you are asking my favorite group and why. I think Dreamcatcher's up there because their concept is so interesting and I really want to support, and they have such an underdog story. My heart kind of goes out to them, so I'm kind of emotionally attached to that story from just a narrative standpoint. I mean, I like Blackpink like everyone, but they haven't come out with anything. It's hard to react to their stuff because it's so few and far between. I tend to like groups that have a little bit more, just for me, my personal taste, that are a little bit more hard-hitting and driving and a little more swag to it. Old school Big Bang was really cool back in the day. I'm interested to see what kind of new stuff they come out with. I'm always open to new stuff. Any suggestions you see, I try everything, and I'm willing to try anything out. I think having a closed mind to stuff is poor. You should never do that. As for movies, I try to usually, that's a good question. I do want to get back to doing movie reviews because, you know, that's what I'm currently doing right now, is in the TV film industry. But not a lot of movies have come out. I mean, let's be honest, there's no releases of anything. If there's anything on Netflix that you suggest I watch, I'll definitely take a look at it. But yeah, unfortunately, there's a lack of brand new content that's coming out. I tend to like certain directors based on their style. Like I love David Fincher. I like Terrence Malick. He's very different. I like him for very specific reasons. Maybe I can talk about that a little bit more. Spielberg was good back in the day. Scorsese is good for some really important things. Cary Joy Fukunawa is a new one, the guy's freaking amazing. if you study directors enough, then you can actually, when you watch a movie, you can actually see things that represent that director. Like when I watch a Fincher movie, I can tell it's Fincher. I just watched a Soderbergh movie, Contagion, the other day. I didn't even know it was Soderbergh, but I thought to myself, like, these shots with a shaky handheld camera seems like a Soderbergh movie, and it was. So if you do enough education and study filmmakers, you can actually tell their visual style just by watching those things. You can take those things, put them in your toolbox. I'm not really sure. It really depends on the availability of things, but I do want to do more of that stuff. Jerry Young, happy and healthy. Jerry, you be happy and healthy. One Ice Bang, are you a fan of any certain K-pop groups? Is there a certain K-pop of your style, a genre of K-pop your style, or no? Yeah, I just kind of answer that. I think I like stuff that's a little more driving. We'll do one more because I know I'm talking way too long on these. Okay, this is Elena Castillo. I have a few questions. I hope some of them don't make you feel uncomfortable. That's a good way to start off a conversation. One, are you single, taken, or married? This should not be that hard to answer, but it kind of is. I have an off-again, on-again girl. Don't know what's going on. We live kind of 3 hours away from each other. It's been a difficult situation. I don't want to talk about the whole thing right here because it's not fair to her. I'm single-ish. What's your type of girl? I think it changes when you... when you're young. I think when you're young, it's just all looks-based, and I think that when you get older, you care a lot about whether that person is carry on an intelligent conversation with you or not. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, but as long as you guys can have a conversation or have good chemistry where you can sit and you can have a conversation for a long time without having to feel awkward or having to push a conversation. I think maybe I will stop right there and I'll answer more questions in another video, guys. So for this episode, that's a wrap.